To introduce myself. My name is Jeff Leon. I am the CEO of Cornerstone Marketing. And today's guest is Mark Neubauer. He is the president and CEO of Pike Productions. Mark, I believe you have a safe harbor agreement to go over.
Yes, thank you. I put it in the chat here. I'll go ahead and read it. This meeting may contain forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. Statements contained in this release that are not historical facts may be deemed to be forward-looking statements. Investors are cautioned that forward-looking statements are inherently uncertain. Actual performance and results may differ materially from that projected or suggested herein due to certain risks and uncertainties, including without limitation, ability to obtain financing and regulatory and shareholder approvals of anticipated actions.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so I'd just like to start off today. We have a ton of great questions submitted by shareholders. I was shocked. There was well over 30. So I compiled them, trimmed them down a little bit. So we're going to start off with the background portion here. So can you provide some details of your personal background and experience in the film industry, please?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this dates back to my memorizing the TV guide back in grade school. I mean, I've always been passionate about the industry and everything behind and in front of the camera. I started out on the performing side, just acting, and that goes all the way to my days in Chicago around college years. I studied at the renowned Second City in Chicago under Marty DeMott and a bunch of really great people there. Alongside my attendance at Columbia College Chicago, where I did study filmmaking, the business of filmmaking, with specialties in production and screenwriting. From there, I directed I wrote and produced a short film called Dream Killer, based on Sirhan Sirhan's life and the events in his life that culminated in the assassination of Robert Kennedy. So it was kind of like the story told from the assassin's point of view, almost like a taxi driver type thing. We took Best of the Fest at the New York International Film Festival for that, particularly in its category of historical fiction. From there, I moved out to LA and worked at talent and literary agencies, the Gage Group, most notably so. Back then it was over there on Sunset Boulevard, and we helped clients of all kinds on all kinds of different shows. That's when I really got to know the business, and at which point, you know, Mike the Pike was actually a seedling born back in 2002. Mm-hmm. That's when we put together the beginnings of a film that we had Burt Reynolds, Chris Elliott, Alan King, and a bunch of others lined up for. And since then, we've really, well, let's fast forward. We grew into producing our first major feature film, Beyond White Space, starring Holt McCallany. Really top tier talent like Holt and Zulai Hanau. That got a theatrical release in 2018. And as much as I love being on set, you know, with the family and everything that comes with taking care of family, being in a warehouse 80, 90 hours a week, 115 degree weather in the valley, shooting for outer space. I really that coincided with our very first book option, the George Martin Project. And that's when we really found our footing with a model that was extremely scalable and did not require, millions and millions of dollars to get a strong footing in the industry as we have.
That's really great to hear about. Now, we've talked in the past, just one-on-one, about some of the connections in the industry you have. And can you maybe expand on that? Like some of the people you know and how you're going to leverage those connections to turn MIKP into a mini major studio in the future?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Jeff. Our connections are always growing, always expanding, right? Because once you do right by one, you're introduced to two more. So we went from knocking on a lot of doors to the one true blessing that came out of our relationship that was developed with George Martin on the property, The Skin Trade, was that, I discovered that book well before there was any Game of Thrones on HBO, right? Mm-hmm. And it just so happened that we signed our initial option agreement about 6 months before HBO took that to series. And all of a sudden, at one time, he was the #1 author in the world above J.K. Rowling and Stephen King, right? Mm-hmm. So at that time period, I mean, that allowed us to open so many doors. I don't, I'm certainly not here to name drop, but I can say, we've dealt with the likes all the way up to, Gail Ann Hurd, who produced Aliens and Terminator. Great relationship with Phil Kobolansky over at their office. Through a deal there, we've dealt with people over at Universal. One of their top people at her office went to Netflix and ended up running the Marvel slate for Netflix, and now is over at E1. And I would say the real crux of our connections, though, outside of what we've been able to build ourselves, and really it's just about, by the way, Jeff, it's just about knocking on doors, being good people, and having access to great material.
Right.
If everybody talks about Hollywood, but those on the inside know, you got to be you got to be good and do by your word in order to build sustainable relationships, just like any other industry. And we've been able to cultivate some strong relationships. But I would say the one that I'm really, really thankful for is our strategic partner and almost been a mentor to me, is John Levin. John has been, he was a super agent for years. He was at CAA for 40 years. One of the first people that, made CAA what it is today. He went on his own about, I'd say at this point, probably 5 or 6 years ago with his company, Sustainable Imagination, has been involved in hundreds and hundreds of projects, over 100 films that he's been involved in, have been nominated for Academy Awards. And John is just an amazing person who was one of the few people that would listen to us when we, were just starting out and had not much at our disposal. And one day he just asked, "Who are you? What are you trying to accomplish, and how can I help?" And the rest is history there. He's become a beloved friend and a big ally to us in being boots on the ground in Hollywood there.
Well, I've definitely heard of John. I mean, like, who hasn't heard of like Karate Kid and things like that John's been involved in over the years? He's a big player for sure. So like moving on past the background side, the big part of MIKP's assets, of course, is the IPs. And so one of the questions I actually got in the Discord question room was if you could explain, and I understand it, but if you could explain what the concept of an IP is and how is MIKP going to profit from the ownership of the IPs?
Absolutely. I mean, I should have some titles offhand, but of course I'm blanking. That said, top 10 box office hits of this year to date. And now that includes Barbie, which had an amazing opening weekend of over $150 million, is based on, IP and legacy IP at that. So by legacy IP, I mean things that have been around for a while, have really earned that relationship collateral with their audience in so many different ways and formats. And legacy IP is definitely at the heart of what we look for. Mm-hmm. But, IP, intellectual property, in our side of the industry is just a fancy name for content, right? And material on which content is based. So why that's valuable is studios, streamers, production companies, we as humans, right? Human nature is we love familiarity, and we love originality, but with a little bit of familiarity built in, right? You've automatically got that warm feeling. And that's why Avengers was so popular when it hit the screens, is it had decades and decades of fans who love the comics, who are now like, okay, what are they going to do to this thing on screen, right? And therein was born the universe. So essentially, Jeff, what it is what I tell like a neighbor who asks, like, what do you do, right? We acquire rights to books and comic books, and we work our butts off to develop these as TV or film projects. And from there, right, like phase 2 would be then taking the basis of those projects and expanding into all kinds of mediums. AI, virtual reality, augmented reality, the metaverse, video games, right? There is just so many possibilities right now with
even action figures and stuff like that. You would still
merchandising, action figures, Halloween costumes, you name it.
I mean, it's all there. So probably the biggest IP that it's actually, it can be tough to say between Wish and Vampirella, but Vampirella has like an almost cult-like following among the comic book world. You know, what are your,
Yeah.
can you give me some of the plans for this IP in as much detail as you can? You know, TV series, movies, animation, you know, what merchandising, action figures, you know, I know this is, you know, they've got 45 characters. Several of these characters have their own spin-off comics. I mean, I'm super excited and interested in this series.
Me too. I cannot tell you what a fan I've become of Vampirella. And you know what I will say is, as you know, enticing as some of the visuals may be for some, she's often hypersexualized on the covers, for instance, by artists, which was been done with Harley Quinn and Wonder Woman and a lot of heroes throughout comics in history. But scratch the surface, and you've got just one of the most amazing, beloved characters in comic book history. There's a lot of heart, there's a lot of pathos, there's a lot of character development to be had for Vampirella and everything she's going through, particularly in the Christopher Priest run. One thing, you know, for shareholders who are really interested and general public really interested in getting to know Vampirella, by all means, she's been around since 1969, so decades and decades of materials and comics and all kinds of stuff. But I would really focus on the Christopher Priest run, which started in 2019. Those are compiled in volumes now. You can get on Amazon or Comixology, called Seduction of the Innocent. So frankly, I'd start with Seduction of the Innocent Volume 1, move into Volume 2. And yes, Jeff, from there, I encourage everybody to just fill out that little form on the website, arowanamedia.com, on the Vampirella page, and get a look at the deck. We worked our butts off on that deck, and you're going to get a fully fleshed picture of what this is going to look like in terms of story and how we're, you know, looking to present it on screen. And so to just add to that, Jeff, to answer your question directly, our strategy is to launch this because of Vampirella is tricky. And so because of her outfit and this and that, you know, there's so much going on with Vampy that we feel as a team the very best way to introduce her to the world on screen is through animation, because you can take so many liberties in animation. You can, you know, really highlight certain things without, you know, kind of watering down the character or anything that makes her what she is, because she's everything she is, and we don't want to sacrifice any of that. And the medium of animation, if anybody has seen, for instance, the Spider-Verse movies, right, Into the Spider-Verse, it's incredible and mind-blowing what we can do with visuals, particularly these days on the animation side. And that is why we've, you know, partnered with the studio to introduce Vampy to the world via animated series. But from there, you know, we have plans for live action, spin-offs, you name it. I mean,
Yeah.
Sky's the limit with as far as we're going to go with Vampirella.
Well, I think even characters like Red Sonja, I mean, she's got a massive following too, and that's just one of 45 characters from that series. So it's almost endless. It's a universe, and I've said that in several of my posts about it. Is a universe, not unlike DC universe, not unlike Marvel universe. This isn't a single character like some of the other IPs that are out there. This is a universe. So
I agree.
yeah.
I have to admit, the first time we found Vampy, you know, we were looking at Vampirella and adapting the character, but in assembling our pitch deck, I mean, I just poured over pages and pages and volumes and got to know these characters very intimately through research, and found that indeed, you know, this is something that, you know, we're going all the way with, because as you said, there are characters now that have followed suit with what we built out in the deck, and that is Dynamite and the general public are starting to see this as a universe of characters more than ever before. In the last 2 years, characters within the universe that we have the film TV rights to have spawned their own successful comic book series. So Draculina, Nyx, which is a fascinating character.
Oh, I like that character.
She's amazing. Lots of moral dilemmas and character development possibilities for her. And of course, Victory was recently released, along with all the different renditions of Vampirella outside of the Christopher Priest run.
Absolutely. Now, can you provide any details about the agreement between MIKP and Dynamite Comics?
I mean, I can't get too micro with it, but the fact is we love Dynamite. Nick Barucci over there, the founder, amazing guy to work with. Very well respected in the comics universe and no stranger to film. I mean, Nick, if you watch The Boys, for instance, on Amazon, Nick is an executive producer of The Boys, because The Boys is also a Dynamite comic. And Red Sonja, which is in development also as a feature film and universe. So we're just thrilled to be partnered with Nick and especially the agency that he's given Christopher Priest in taking this universe and making it what it's become over the last few years, just, you know, by happenstance, alongside everything that we have been doing on the development for film TV side. Our agreement is simply we've got this property under option. I will say the one small benefit to the writer's strike, which I'm sure we'll get into in a second, but one small benefit to us is that, you know, in every agreement we do, Jeff, with our creators, authors, publishers, is there's what's called a force majeure clause, right? So things that are beyond our control that would cause us to really slow down on our workload, e.g. a strike, right? We're able to write publishers like Dynamite, authors like Barbara, and very amicably say, hey, there's a strike going on. We're going to exercise our force majeure clause. So what that does is it kind of pauses our time with the contract for the duration of the strike. And that allows us to really still get some work done outside of that, which would involve those people that are prohibited to be working during the strike.
Well, that's good. That's good. So now, aside from Vampirella, is MIKP contracted to produce any media or any other IPs for Dynamite? Or might there be some synergy in the future?
I think there's a ton of synergy in the future. I definitely have my eyes on some books, but with Dynamite, this is one that, you know, we've gone so far and are so, you know, in bed with them in such a great way. We want to prove this out first, right? We want to prove out Vampirella, put high priority on Vampy, show what we can do, and then absolutely, I think there's a ton of potential with strategic partnerships on Dynamite and their other books and who knows what, you
Awesome.
know. As we grow, I mean, I'm not saying they're necessarily a target acquisition at this moment, but as we grow, one of our objectives is to begin acquiring publishers, starting with smaller publishers, disparate libraries, individual film licenses, things like that.
Excellent. That's great to hear. It's certainly good that your relationship with Dynamite's so strong because they have an incredible library.
Yeah, they really do.
Now, Wish, we talked about a little bit already. It's not only a bestseller, it's also required reading in many middle schools and it's received tons of awards. We've seen some posts and PRs about it being already in development and potentially coming out sometime next year. There's a writer's strike going on, so obviously that's got to get handled. Now, is Joey Clark still attached as screenwriter for the film adaptation?
Yes, in fact, the beautiful thing about Wish, and it is, I encourage everybody to read this book, especially if you have children. The way I discovered this book, Jeff, was this was one of the last books. My boys are 16 and 13 now, but up to a couple years ago, I had the pleasure of reading to them every night, right? And I loved, you know, the whole bit, the voices, the accents, everything. And Wish was about, they were at that age where this is about the last time I could actually get them to let me to read to them, right?
Yeah.
And here it is funny, you look at the cover and you might think this is a book for girls, but this is a book for everybody. This is a book about mindset, attitude, overcoming, you know, strife and tough times, and in such a positive way. I mean, it's a book for everybody. And it was in reading that to them and just seeing their faces light up and we were excited to read it every night that I thought we got to go after this, like, and that's why we reached out to Barbara. So this book is near and dear to me in that sense. As far as Joey goes, absolutely. Joey is an immense talent. He is a Nickel Fellow screenwriter, and that's a big deal. If you don't know what a Nickel Fellow is, look it up. I'm putting it in the chat here. That's pretty high compliment.
Very high, yes.
Any screenwriter. And Joey really, you know, we read another script by Joey that happened to involve a dog, by the way, and phenomenal, just blew Rich and I away. And again, this is what's great about John Levin. John Levin was representing Joey at the time and he brought him to the table and said, you guys got to look at Joey, check out his work. And Joey was so generous with us and flexible on terms and everything else. He got the screenplay done. And what's wonderful about Wish is, again, we're in the middle of a writer's strike, but we've got a script done. So script done, we're out to directors on Wish, we're partnered with a production company, and we are in, I would say, pretty great stage of development for a feature film on Wish, this will be a live action feature right now is what we're looking to do. And currently the script is out to some notable directors that I can't exactly name, but some notable directors that we're really excited about getting feedback on the script from.
I'm very excited to see that hit the silver screen.
This is what we call in the entertainment industry a 4-wall feature, right? 4-wall meaning you're a 4-quadrant. I was mixing terms. A 4-quadrant feature, and what that means is you're hitting all the demographics with this. So
absolutely, like I'd love to take my family to see it.
Yep, likewise.
Elia Claw is super interesting. It's a massive series. And like we talked about before, this is almost like in the Yellowstone type of genre. Like this could be the next See It on Prime, Yellowstone, 10 seasons type of massive series.
Absolutely.
Now my question is it going to be like a season per book type of plan? Is that kind of where do you see this developing?
Great question. So Ella Claw is an amazing series. It does, in the books, it takes place in the Navajo world, right? But we are, right now, we're agnostic as far as what nation is going to be represented in the book. And that's just strategically. There's one series out now that just got renewed for season 2. If anybody knows about Dark Winds. Dark Winds is based on the Hillerman books. Hillerman actually writes the foreword to the Ella Claw books. He's one of the most notable in this category, and he speaks very highly of this series. Dark Winds is a Robert Redford and George R.R. Martin developed TV series.
Wow.
And oddly enough, we actually that's based on a book called Leaphorn and Chi. We went after Leaphorn and Chi, and because it was just sitting there, we even wrote to Robert Redford and said, hey, we'd like to work on this with you. And that's when they said, well, we'd love to, but we actually have some plans for this. Where that ties in is that takes place in the Navajo world. It's also a police procedural. So we figure we're going to expand the landscape. We are right now agnostic about, again, which nation it's going to represent. But this will be a TV series. It's currently being developed for series. And I'm just so grateful for George R.R. Martin, because he was one of the people that we reached out to, given his work on Dark Winds, to say, hey, it's sad but true. The Native American writing pool is underserved and underrepresented. So can you make some suggestions for us? You must have some. And sure enough, through different courses of action, that led us to find a writer, a Native American writer, who will be partnering with a highly seasoned executive producer. He's been nominated for 7 Emmy Awards, has won 2, I believe. And he will be kind of guiding this newer showrunner who has proven experience writing on a show like this. I'm trying to dance around because there are some specifics I can't mention yet.
Yeah.
And so that will be series. Now, what I will say is before the strike, we were able to have some great discussions as a team with the writer. And, and what we believe in, we love the creatives, right? So whoever we choose to be the creative, they have license, and we all kind of agree on that. And this particular writer was really aligned with how we felt. And that is, look, the stories are great. There's a lot of great plot lines in this, a lot of great characters, but that's what I'm in love with, is this character. Here's a woman who left the reservation long ago, became an FBI agent. And for those that aren't aware, and one of our big agendas here is to be a part of the movement in getting more, versatile writers room, diverse writers room, and especially Native American representation of Native American voices and stories. So it was really important for us to find an Indigenous showrunner. And, his word is, look, this is just an amazing character, right? FBI agent, left the reservation. Her father is murdered back on the reservation. So here it is years later, she's got to go back and solve her father's murder. And she's not trusted by either side at this point, you know? She's got one foot in each world. And so she's got a lot of goodwill to earn there, for better or for worse. And through the progression of the story, we find she actually becomes an official officer detective on the reservation. And that's where the story really starts to get fun, as she's now really trying to adopt her heritage and solve crimes on the reservation, which we hope to kind of be like a Law and Order type thing, right? Just straight from the headlines. We'll be doing maybe some classic stories, but also there's a lot going on in the Native American communities, in which we get to not only be, like you say, an exciting neo-Western drama like a Yellowstone, but also get some major issues that are going on in the real world out there in front of everybody, and raise awareness.
It's certainly underrepresented today. So I applaud you for that, Mark. Now on Silver Wings, that's probably honestly the IP I know the least about. What can you tell us about Silver Wings?
So Silver Wings incredible. It's written by Kenneth Oppel. It's a trilogy with a prequel book involved. I would say that's probably our slowest going project right now. And that's simply because the other ones we have an option on. We're in control. We can drive the car. On Silver Wing, we've been so blessed by the founder of Bardell Entertainment. If no one knows Bardell, look it up. Everyone in the industry certainly will. Rick and Morty is a comic that comes to mind. Dragon Prince on Netflix. I mean, you name the series, Bardell has probably been involved with it. And the founder of Bardell has just been super generous with us in terms of saying, look, you're obviously very passionate about this material. I can't part with it. This is the one property that she kept to herself after selling Bardell off to a much larger studio in Canada. And so there's definitely some nostalgic attachment there. And so Rich and I and John and Mike the Pike, we're working in tandem with her to develop this as we're on a parallel track with Silver Wing. So it could be animated or 3D, kind of like they've done Jungle Book and some of the other movies, right? It could be an animated 3D feature, or we might just go to series like they did back in the original incarnation of Silver Wing. But of course, again, just be more dynamic, avant-garde with the cinematics. One of the things I'm super excited about with the Silver Wing is we're talking about bats here. So you can see all the stuff that was done in the Top Gun movie with aerial combat.
Yeah.
We see a lot of really great like aerial sequences with these bats and their echolocation and how that can be visualized. And all along this traditional hero's journey story about, the runt of a litter of bats who gets separated from his colony and has to find his way home and meets all kinds of evil, villainous characters along the way, and basically just wants to find his mom, right? So it's a really, really cool story that we're involved with.
I can see where it could make a really big children's movie for sure, or series. I mean, the story sounds great. Now, Mark, I'm going to get to some tough stuff. We're going to ask you some finance questions. So could you provide maybe a little bit of a breakdown on Beyond White Space? We've seen some stuff about where you expect to maybe potentially break even this year. We know it's on several streaming platforms. It was released, I believe, in 2018, right?
Yes.
What are the plans for the rest of that movie, and are there any expected revenues to start coming into MIKP on it?
Yes. So Beyond White Space was an exercise for us, right? It was truly something that it was a great opportunity for us. It really did elevate us in many ways to opportunities that we wouldn't have without White Space. For what it's worth, on we can say it on this call. I mean, that film was produced for just under $1 million. And if anybody's seen the film, it's the script, admittedly, everything else, it's not Citizen Kane, but it's very entertaining. And what we're really proud of is what we were able to accomplish there in terms of production value, right? So we're looking at what if you watch the film, it looks like, a minimum $10 million picture, maybe $20-30 million picture. We did it for under $1 million. We have just about broken even on it. And that is, therein is the answer as to why our model has become what it is. Because look, content is king, but in the world of developing feature films, and unless you do a lot of that development and financing on the front side, you're going to lose a lot of the upside to the major distributors, right? By getting legacy IP and IP that studios are already craving. For instance, I can tell you, we have been courted by a major studio. It's one of the big five. You guys know it, for Vampirella. And we've said no twice, because we are going to control our destiny with that, and know that we can go back to a studio like that once packaged and get just such a much better deal that will create a legacy for Pike, Arowana, and its shareholders. And that is our intent with all of these properties, is to build out a legacy that will well outlive any of us on this call, right? So, so White Space, great experience. Loved, being on set. Amazing how, for those that haven't, amazing how you can just be in a warehouse in the middle of the valley, and boom, we're in outer space, right? So great stuff. We're just about broken even. I'm not expecting like major revenues off of Beyond White Space, but it definitely did lead us to a meeting of the minds, which has given birth to our business model of which is just so much more scalable than trying to raise millions of dollars for films, right? We're raising thousands of dollars to acquire properties, maybe hundreds of thousands to develop properties. And at that point, that's when you partner with studios and financiers to say, hey, partner with us. You put up the millions. We're bringing the property, the development. We've got attachments and directors, writers, this, that, and the other. And now you've got a much bigger stake at the table because of all the groundwork that you do in advance for those kinds of things.
Sounds great. Now, I had a question submitted that said, is MIKP considering creating content for social media platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, to create buzz or generate ad revenue?
I'm sorry, somebody commented on the cast.
No problem, Mark. A question submitted was, is Mike the Pike considering creating any content for social media platforms such as YouTube, TikTok to create buzz or generate ad revenue?
Yes and no. I mean, to create buzz is one thing. Absolutely. That's what social media is for. And honestly, thank you, Jeff. And thanks to Cornerstone Marketing, we're going to be highly active on social media. In terms of creating buzz and getting the word out as well. As we start to flesh these out, our production partners, for instance, we've got I'm not going to say who. I know you have a guest. I can't confirm or deny until it's time. And for shareholders that wonder, the reason that we don't, we're partnered with big people, and I know the question might be, well, why don't you announce that? Get it out there. Mm-hmm. The reason is right now, number one, we're in the middle of a strike. Two, right? Actors and writers on strike. So it's a little tone deaf for us to come out and just make a major announcement as to who we're partnered with. When who we're partnered with, we can't really work on some of the stuff we want to work on, and it's not going to get as much, oomph on that side. As well, we have the opportunity with our partners to be placed in Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, Forbes, things like that, and we will. But if we put out a general press release, normally those outlets at that point are like, well, it's already out there. What do we have to talk about, right? Yeah. So that is our strategy, and why I speak very high level about some of these partnerships. But absolutely, and so when it gets to the other side of content, yes, anything goes these days as far as what can be adapted from what. So we will, phase one here is just acquiring rights to IP and properties. And then we identify the partners which can best launch that property to screen in compelling ways. And all the while, we will be developing original content. And that's where I can see us maybe developing a series for YouTube, right? Or, even I'm positive it's coming on a lot of these outlets is just series broken up into, 2-minute TikTok clips, things like that, right? So
Yeah.
yes, the plan is yes. We're in the content game, and we're not going to ignore any valuable outlet in terms of how we can get that content out there.
Now, are you guys collaborating with any non-union crews and actors to continue production during the strike?
Are we what, collaborating with any unions?
With any non-union crews or actors during?
Not at this time. There is one project that we made that we're having some really interesting talks on. As a contending mini major, we're looking to really build relationships that will the strike is just something that has to happen every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Technology has outpaced agreements at this point. And studios, hey, God bless them, they're trying to rely on old agreement language to get as much as they can. But sorry, things have really advanced and changed to the point where it's time to redraft some of these agreements. And it didn't come to a strike, but even a couple years ago, nobody cared about audio or radio rights a couple years ago. Then comes a billion dollar, Spotify deal, right? And now all of a sudden everybody wants podcast rights. Well, guess what? That language wasn't in agreements 5-6 years ago. Now it's in every agreement. So, and now we're seeing that with Web3 metaverse as well. That wasn't anything that anybody thought about. Now it's being carefully thought about, negotiated, and it's either included or it's not.
Right. Are there any remaining toxic notes in the company's finances?
No, there are not.
No, they're not. Thank you.
We eliminated all toxic notes. Super proud of that. Some of that we inherited. Some of that was admittedly of my doing 10, 11 years ago, out of ignorance, and basically following suit of those who passed the vehicle on to us. We've since learned better, I believe, become better people, better business people, and all around a lot of personal growth, if you will, for Pike that I'm just super excited about, because it's positioned us for, what I believe, especially in Vampirella, for instance, is going to be a multi-billion-dollar universe.
You got it. Does the company plan to secure any financing through convertible notes? And is there any plans for any stock splits, buybacks, or any form of any debt reorganization? Of course, I've noticed that you don't really have a lot of debt either, but.
We don't have plans either way at this time, other than seeing this road through, right? It was one initiative to get through the Form 10 with the SEC. We've got Q2 coming up that we're getting ready. So though we've been running full force, I think I've made it clear, even in the Form 10, I do own an insurance agency that I run with Symmetry Financial Group as the IMO. I have done everything I can to self-fund our growth and invest in projects that these projects are so near and dear to my heart that I'd have it no other way, right? We got to get it one way or the other.
I love it.
That said, Form 10, SEC filing done, Q2 coming up. Our next step is to proceed with a 15C211. And at that point, to some degree, we will be beholden to the brokers and FINRA and everybody else that's involved in that process. And so I'm just taking it step by step. But so far, asking me today, there are no major plans to do any of that. Again, there is no toxic debt, and we don't have too much to deal with in that respect until we find out, what's ahead of us in the 15C211 process.
That's great to hear, Mark. And I love to hear that. It's honestly, you're probably the first OTC CEO I've ever talked to that self-funded his company with his earnings from his own private company that he started. That is absolutely amazing to hear. And you answered my question on the 211, which was my next question. So what is the anticipated impact of the ongoing writer and actor union strikes on your production?
I'll answer that, but first I have to give, I have to just say thank you. I've self-funded probably, 90% of everything that has come through this. my very initial option. I've since covered the re-up and all the legal and everything else, but I have a good friend on here that helped us with the initial Vampirella monies. And we had two shareholders step up who were just so supportive and encouraging late last year. And they said, why don't you do a Form 10? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And they really just gave us a kick in the rear in the right direction and helped out in such a big way. I can't go without saying that. If it weren't for them, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. So I'm you know who you are. I'm ever grateful for that. As far as the strike goes, yeah, there are some pros and cons, right? Oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you something, but I'll tell you at the end. I'm super excited about an announcement that we have coming up here. But as far as the strike goes, look, these are tough times, but these are important times. These are really important times. The strike has got to play out. Projections, the studios have gone so far. One rep said we're going to starve them out, right? So, and I don't know if anybody's following. Ron Perlman, Hellboy, had a few words to say about that. So that really interesting back and forth throughout. But look, they're just looking for contracts and agreements to catch up with the times, and it's time for that to happen. So, however long that takes, we're in full support. Yes, there are some non-union opportunities that won't interfere with our support of that and our standing in solidarity of the strikes that are going on. What it will slow down is, sure, on Ella Claw, for instance, we're doing some other work, but we just secured an Emmy-winning executive producer. We just secured a showrunner who has experience on a big show right now. We're super excited about that. They can't work on this right now, right? We can't craft a pitch. He's not allowed to write. So we're not writing Ella Claw, and we could be if there weren't a strike. That said, great. That's why we assemble a portfolio of projects, because we've got the script done for Wish, and we're proceeding with attaching directors for that. The great thing about Vampirella is animation's a whole different animal. So there are a ton of things that we can be doing development-wise to set up that world without having to worry about, being on pause with writers just yet, while still, as I mentioned earlier, enjoying for lack of a better term, and I don't want it to come off as tone deaf, but again, just because I want to be respectful of everybody's time, the luxury of the force majeure clause in our agreements, which allows us to pause the clock on our option agreements while we can still get some things done all the while.
Right. So in a recent PR, you mentioned AI. So what are your plans for adding AI into MIKP? Is that via like a merger acquisition, or are you just thinking software?
We're a little of both. Right now, initially our focus is still just the heart of our business is acquiring and developing IP. That said, a lot of verticals in our industry, virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence. If you look at what the major studios are doing, we're just following them in baby steps, right? So we're baby versions of what the big studios are doing. And any one of their business models leaves no vertical unturned. So without spreading ourselves thin, Jeff, we have no desire to invent something new in the AI space or hire a team of programmers to create AI just yet, anything like that. But we are on the lookout for meaningful, viable target acquisitions in the AI space. For instance, one of the most valuable projected, believe it or not, one of the most valuable projected technologies in the AI space is voice control, right? And a lot of us are seeing that more and more with Alexa. My Siri's still kind of useless, but Alexa and some other things, right? Voice control is a big component. So we are on the lookout for potential acquisitions as we get through the 15C to 11, things like that, that would give us not only a technology side of the business, but a revenue source for the company in the AI space, which could lead to tremendous results for us.
Absolutely. AI is huge right now. So will MIKP venture into the streaming space as a content or channel partner with either a mini or major studio in the future, possibly?
If I'm getting the question right, absolutely. Streamers are exactly, outside of maybe Wish, which could be geared toward a theatrical release. Just the same, it could be a pickup by a Paramount Plus, right? Streamers are still contending big time for content, particularly content based on proven IP, like Wish, Vampirella, Ella Claw, right? So absolutely, streamers are in the mix. Are we planning on being our own channel? Not at this time, though. Phase 2 or 3, we do have aspirations for one channel concept that I've had for some time.
That's great. Now, so this is your like lifelong dream, and we've talked about that. So I know you don't have any plans to sell MIKP, but where do you envision this company in 5 years?
In 5 years, I envision us being courted by bigger studios to be acquired. A great example I like to note is, oh gosh, I just blanked on their name. Sorry, and I know we're getting through this, but Summit Entertainment, who produced the Twilight series, right? They weren't even through the entire series yet when Lionsgate acquired them for $400 million, right?
Wow.
And Summit was relatively unknown outside of their pickup of a popular book that became a very popular film franchise and is now in development as a TV series, right? So here we are about 10 years later or so, and it's still that world is still expanding, that world's still evolving. So you've got acquisitions like that happening every day in our space, and more so as the studios look to consolidate and pick up acquisitions. So 5 years from now, we're going to be very well positioned for an acquisition by a studio. We're not ruling anything out, but I do believe we will, at that point, we'll have had Wish, produced and released. We'll have had Vampirella produced and released as an animated series, Ella Claw produced and released as a television series, and we've got a handful of really, really powerful IP that we're picking up this year in the coming next few months that we'll be announcing that. I think we're going to blow you guys away, especially with one of these, which has been I've been pursuing for lack of a better term since 2013.
Wow. Yeah, I know you keep telling me that you have several big IPs pending to be announced. So, and I know you've teased us all about that. So Mark, I'm going to open the floor up now to you. And I want to thank everybody for coming today. Mark, you are a gentleman, and thank you so much for taking the time to share your vision with us today. And if you have any announcements that you feel that you can share with us today, or you want to tell us anything further about the company, please do so.
Thank you, Jeff. With respect to everybody's time, I won't say much because I could go for another hour here. I'm so excited about where we're at and where we're going. What I can say, just to reiterate, I encourage everybody to do your research on the properties that we have as we get them. That I think will get and compare it to other properties that have been adapted by major studios, because though we will have some independent productions and original content being produced in-house, it's only going to be alongside that which we have that it has already been courted by major studios. And we're going to be partnering with those major studios and outlets to really get Mike the Pike's name out there, right? So Arowana is the holding company, but Mike the Pike will be that, that company credit, that logo. Mike the Pike's going to be known everywhere as that thing that you see before the film. And I'm super, super excited about that. I do believe Vampirella is a multi-billion-dollar universe just waiting to be exploited properly. And we do have, if you read through the Form 10, we have an incredible partner out of Vancouver that has produced some amazing content out there. Everybody's heard of these projects. And one of the things I'm most excited about, because this has been, I've just been doing what I can on the website side. We've got new websites coming out. Number one for Mike the Pike Productions for shareholders. One of the things we do intend to do, Jeff, is eventually change the name of the public company to Arowana Media Holdings. That's always been my goal as an overarching.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
Mike Pike is the operating subsidiary. So We will have an investor website coming out, I'd say in the next week or so. And
Wow.
we're also going to be launching a site for Mike the Pike and its projects in about a week or so. I'm just doing edits with your amazing team. I cannot wait to release those. And the other thing that will be coming out with is within the next week, I will, in spite of the strike and everything else, you know, we got to do business as usual and keep everybody knowing that we're working and doing the work and doing it right. I will be making a major announcement in the next week on a property that we have acquired the rights to. And
All right. Very exciting.
A very, very well-known comics creator. You guys know his work extremely well. His work has been adapted into major series on Netflix. Feature film just came out recently. All that stuff. He has taken it upon himself to write a series of novels that we're super excited about, and I will be announcing that in the next week or so tops. And super excited to get your feedback on that.
Wow. Well, that is amazing. So we've got new websites coming. A Vancouver studio with Vampirella. I've already kind of said who I think it is, but Mark won't confirm or deny until the strike is over. We've got a huge IP announcement sometime in the next week or so, guys. So there's lots to look forward to. Mark, you're a gentleman, a great guy. I love your passion for your company. And you guys know I'm a huge movie buff. That's why I wanted to work with Mark. Thank you, Mark, again. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We will have this recorded and up as soon as possible. Yes,
this is being recorded. Jeff, I can't thank you enough for helping us highlight some of the things that I'm super excited about for everybody. And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to come here. Please, guys, we're looking to build an empire here, and you guys are part of that. So spread the word. Please go to the website. I hope that'll cause some of you to get as excited as we are about the projects, and take a moment to just fill in that tiny little info wall that we have to download the project decks. I think when you guys look at the deck for Ella Claw, when you look at the deck for Vampirella, which I did personally by hand, it's a 52 plus page deck. I poured over that for weeks and weeks, but you guys are going to see every character, the storylines, the history, and what's possible with that universe if you get on the website and check out that deck. And we will plan on, I got to confirm this with Jeff, but I hope to be doing a shareholder roundup at least once a quarter so that we can all get together, build our audience, build our fan base, and really proceed together. And like I said, build a legacy here with Mike the Pike and our projects. So thank you guys so much. And Jeff, thank you for making this happen. I'm super excited about the days, months, and years to come. Absolutely. Take care, everybody. Bye, guys. Bye. Thank you.